I'm Maggie. I'm a licensed clinical psychotherapist with degrees in psychology, theology, and marriage and family therapy, a national certification in dialectical behavioral therapy, and a national certification in integrative mental health. In this video, I'm not looking to diagnose anyone. I'm only willing to offer insight into situations like these. Maggie Thompson is presenting the work titled The Book of Knowledge, The Keys of Enoch, written by J.J. Hurtak. Maggie Thompson is not validating nor supporting Hurtak's views, epiphanies, visions, beliefs, or words. Maggie Thompson is simply presenting the work as written and is attempting to translate this extraordinarily esoteric work to a common vernacular and understanding. Further, Maggie Thompson understands this work to be solely concerning the Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and while Hurtak views his work to be the key or keys to uniting all the world's people under one religion, namely Abrahamic, Maggie Thompson does not support this premise whole cloth. However, this work does give depth and insight into the connection of physics, cosmology, biology, and spirituality, which, for the seeker of divine truth, can be invaluable for the discovery of one's place in the universe, and that may be under the hierarchy of Yahweh, the Ancient of Days, or a hierarchy that exists above or beside such deities, or none altogether. Maggie Thompson implores all seekers of knowledge to, letter A, not accept what a person of authority tells you without validation. This includes looking at critiques and the opposing views with an open mind. Letter B, accept that religion, as well as science and politics, is presented as a means of indoctrination and is always presented with the biases of the overall field or system, the authors of texts, and the presenter, whose goals are to convince you of the, quote, truth, end quote, of their premise or premises. Letter C. It is possible to take insight, truths, and information from a biased work. Any body of work for the purpose of deeper meaning and knowledge must be carefully excavated and carved to glean wisdom. And letter D. No work or bodies of work that is believed by a large group or populace of people should be dismissed out of hand simply because you do not believe it. We live in a diverse time where religious belief takes center stage in the governing of the collected masses. To truly understand the barriers and gateways to your personal success and fulfillment, you must accept that believers of any kind can and will do what is necessary to meet their goals.
Y'all got that? That was a lot of disclaimers. Okay, if you guys can hear me okay, hit 1 in the chat. My microphone is doing all kinds of weird stuff today. So just want to make sure you can hear me. And also do what Adrian says and hit the like button. Okay, good. Starting to see the ones. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so today we're going to talk about biophysics and the divine name, as if those things go together, but they might, who knows? Let's talk about it, because this one gets into genetics and all kinds of things. So first, let's say hi to some people. Let's say hi, because this is the best live tribe on YouTube. I don't know if y'all know that yet or not. And for those watching in the clouds, say hello. Add to it if you want to. And for the replay gang, say hello as well. I see all the comments. All right, so Adrian says, let's go. Adric says, it's on, and hashtag Pivot Point Wednesday, as it should be. Eddie is in here. Os. Nina is here with the peace sign, my favorite auntie. Armando is here. Peace to you as well. Rowan made it to alive. It's been forever. Thank you for being here. Cosmic Surfer TV is here. Spain Man is here. Yes, Live Tribe. JB Designs is here. You can't hear the pup because the pups are napping. They went to doggy daycare today. They're tired. So they are asleep. They are laid out. All right. So we are looking at The Keys of Enoch from the Book of Knowledge by J.J. Hertzog. We are going over keys 2-0-2 and 2-0-3 on pages 187 to 203. Now, shout out to the person in the comments that told me there was a glossary in the back of the book. Here's me following rules and just reading it from front to back. Didn't know there was a glossary. That was pretty cool. Insight. And I may not use it tonight. I may or may not. But next week, I totally am. Because there's a word I wanted to hear his definition of. So don't remember who said it. But shout out to that person. If you're watching, thank you. All right. So key 2-0-2 says, here we go. The keys to future biophysics are given in nuclear membranes involved in language transparency coatings beyond acid denaturation and in gel formation by nuclei connecting different mammalian chromosomes to one another. Clear as day. How do we not understand that? Makes total sense. That's a lot of words. All right. Now, Hertzog has a note in here, little asterisks. Okay. He said the original information in key 202 illustrates how the divine code of the holy name or names codes for the genetic structure, parenthetically DNA, RNA, of the Adamic creation. And so a higher bioethics should be considered when working with cloning processes that would alter the genetic structures within the human genome. Okay. I mean, I think we should probably use bioethics for any cloning. I can't say that I disagree. Now, we're doing 2 keys tonight. So key 2-0-3 says, the keys to future biochemistry and biochemical genetics are given in many double helixes for a given chromosome and in many coordinated membrane separators, transmitting multiple mammalian orders to the living chromosomal functions. All are the faces of the eternal present. Again, clear as day. I don't know how we don't understand that. Okay, great show. That one was just self-explanatory. See y'all next week. Just kidding. Just kidding. All right, so I'm going to use multiple concepts, including Disney's TVA from the Loki series, to make this excessively esoteric work into something that's not soteric. Okay, I'm going to critique his premise as well as maybe giving a little guidance. So this key focuses on divine DNA. Okay. All right. A full reading of both of the keys are available on this channel. So if you didn't watch it ahead of time and you want to hear the full reading, it's available. You can get it. Okay. So let's look at some highlights and talk about it. All right. So I always like to read the first verse because that's his like primer explanation. It's not helpful. But anyway, the name of Yahweh is coded within every biochemical function in our body, especially within the life-giving DNA RNA matrix. Okay. All right. The divine name transposed upon the mechanisms of the matrix coding is the primal factor in bioengineering, both for the present as well as the future. All right. So let's talk about this matrix. Okay. Because I want to talk about the Matrix, right? Metaphysics, ancient Egyptian wisdom, Zen, psychology, and quantum physics. All of them all prove that we live in a construct, in a matrix. Science has already proven that, right? Albeit they go at it in different ways. Okay. So, metaphysics, which is the study of reality beyond the physical. Now, just as a side note, all the Greek philosophers, or most of the Greek philosophers, did not call themselves philosophers. They called themselves metaphysicians. That's what they called themselves. And some of the most famous ones went to school in Kemet. Okay. So, metaphysics, the study of reality beyond the physical. It's based on the premise that what we perceive is not what is real. And if you've watched my videos, there are times I talk about what you hear, not necessarily what's making a noise. What you see is not necessarily everything. Our eyes deceive us, our ears deceive us, our feelings deceive us, right? So that makes sense. What they say is that what we perceive is filtered, right? It's filtered through our own self, right? It's distorted and it's illusionary. Okay, so Plato's allegory of the cave. So this is where we first start hearing about everything is an illusion. Talked about the allegory of the cave before, but for those of you who have not seen it, Plato had this picture, and there were people in a cave staring at the wall. And what they were watching were these sort of shadow puppets. So behind the people were people holding puppets on a stick. And behind them was a fire and people tending to the fire. And as you back up, you get closer to the exit of the cave. And this was him showing that what we are looking at is the shadow puppets on the wall. We are propagandized, we are indoctrinated, we are told what to believe by people who are actually behind us doing things to manipulate us. If we were to actually turn around and look at them, we would see the exit to the cave. So this has been around for a very, very, very long time. Then we have Rene Descartes, who said, I think, therefore I am, right? And the way he came to that was he was trying to figure out what is the base truth. What is the basic truth of reality? And he just kept taking it down and taking it down and taking it down because you can't always trust what you perceive. So the way to prove that you're real, you can't say, well, I see stuff, right? I see myself. Okay, well, your eyes can deceive you. I hear my voice. And he just kept taking it down and taking it down and finally he was like, well, I think. And what he said was, even if I'm a brain in a jar on a shelf somewhere, I still exist as a brain in a jar because I can think, right? Everything else is constructed reality, except what you can think, okay? Nick Bostrom said, if any advanced civilization can run ancestor simulations, we're likely living in one. And that's kind of a deep thing to think about. That some advanced civilization is running simulations about their ancestors, and we are characters in that simulation. But that kind of goes along with video game theory, right? Like that the way we live is kind of like we are a character in a video game, and our higher self or our whole over self or our soul is the one that's pushing the buttons and playing the game. And he says, my grandpa loved to say, I think, therefore I am. I love that because I love Descartes. I have a tattoo of Descartes, by the way. All right. In the Hindu writings, in the Advaita Vedanta, all is illusion is what they say. This is like the Bible. Okay. They say all is illusion. Only God is real. and you are God. Could you imagine if a Christian Bible said that? You are God. But that's in the Hindu writings, right? All is an illusion. Only God is real, and you're God. Now, in Kemetism, we know Kemet, Egypt, right? The material world is a projection from the spiritual realm. This is kind of like the allegory of the cave, right? The material world is the shadows on the wall. It's a projection from something outside of our perception, spiritual realm. And human beings are these divine fragments. It's like a fractal. It's a piece of it. They called it nature. Okay. And the emerald tablets. Shout out to anybody who can tell me who wrote the emerald tablets. There's two different names you could give me that are right. Okay. Emerald tablets and Hermeticism always said, as above, so below. It's a projection, right? The duat, the afterlife, is navigated through consciousness, not the physical body. So reality is layered and nonlinear. So what reality is only what we're perceiving at any moment, and sometimes we perceive at a higher level. Thank you, Spain man, Thoth. And if somebody can give me the other name of Thoth, actually, there's two more names for Thoth. So reality is layered and nonlinear. I'm still talking about Kemet, okay? The Ka, the Ba, and the Ak are all layers of the self, different states of existence, right? Quote, man is a star bound to a body. That's from Thoth. That's from the Emerald Tablets. Yes, Hermes Trismegistus or the Thrice Wise. That's where the tri of Trismegistus comes from, because he was like supposedly 3 demigods in one. Okay. So in Zen Buddhism, reality is empty of inherent existence. Okay. All is a mental projection. Everything in your life is only what you're thinking about. Okay. It's a mental projection, because what you think about it gives it importance, and it gives it importance in the way that you think about it. Okay. The sunyata, all phenomenon are empty of inherent self nature. The koans, which are the koans challenge the rational mind because reality transcends logic. So for a long time, especially in the West, we were indoctrinated with God is the most important thing and God is the truth of everything, right? So no matter what the question was, the answer was God. No matter what the problem was, the answer was God. We've sort of made this move, and you can't even say it's polar opposites, because we were made to think it's polar opposites, but we made this move towards science is the answer to everything, right? Logic is the answer to everything. No matter what the problem is, logic is the answer. No matter what the question, logic is the answer. And we're told that they're two opposite things, that you can't 100% believe in God and 100% believe in logic. Like, kind of think about that, because in Christian indoctrination, God is not logical. But those two things are not mutually exclusive, especially if we look at Kemet, full of science and technology and spirituality, all at the same time. Okay, the Satori in Zen Buddhism reveals the dream-like nature of reality, that actually reality and what we're doing right now is the dream. And when we go to sleep, we're actually waking up in reality. And what is reality? Zen Master Hang Po said, "This world is but a dream. Only the awakened realize it." And that is where the term awakened came from, an awakening. That's where it came from. All right. So in psychology, sorry, my nose is itchy. Which side note, because I'm going to have a squirrel moment, even though I have my notes. Okay. One of these days, I'm going to do a show and teach you guys how to tell if somebody's lying, because there are a lot of tells. Some of them are individual to a person, but there are a lot of tells just to see if somebody's lying. And then it's up to you whether you want to play into it or call them on it or whatever. But one of the things is that your nose gets itchy. When somebody's lying, their nose gets itchy. And so I think about that every time my nose is actually itchy. I have dry skin. It's summertime. So that's why my nose is itchy, not because I'm lying about Zen Buddhism. Okay. In psychology, reality is a projection filtered through the mind. The mind is the filter, right? So we could be experiencing the exact same thing, but our realities are different because our brains are filtering them. We have cognitive filters, which are our schemas, our biases. We've talked about biases. And then like Jung talked about how reality is co-created through a shared collective unconscious. So not only do we have our own individual brain filter, we're also filtering it through somehow this connection that we all have to one another. When quantum physics proved all humans, maybe not all people, but all humans are connected to one another on a quantum level, energetically. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And I will add, you may also call it God or the devil. And the whole time it was your unconscious doing it. In quantum physics, the universe doesn't exist until it is observed, meaning it's code-based and it is responsive like a simulation. I mean, we've talked about the double slit experiment, right? It gives you all the options. A reality exists in a wave form until you look at it, until you observe it in some way, right? We've also talked about on this channel how eyesight is. We don't perceive it, but there is a pause in our eyesight of what we're looking at. It's kind of like when you watch a live show, there's a few seconds. It's not that long with eyesight. It's a fraction of a second. But there's this little pause in what we're seeing. We don't perceive it. We think we're seeing everything in exact real time, and we are not. It's a pause. And some people believe that that teeny tiny pause is there so that everything that's existing in wave form can drop into reality before we perceive it. Isn't that a fun thing to think about? Okay. So quantum entanglement. Okay. Particles can and do communicate across vast distances instantaneously, breaking all that Newtonian logic. Okay. Doesn't matter how far apart, if those particles have a relationship with one another and then they are separated, they will still talk to each other across whatever distance. Okay. Planck units, which Hertog talks about Planck in here. Planck units and pixels of space-time, there are pixels in space-time, show that reality is quantized like a computer screen. So the Matrix, right? All the prophets warned that what we're doing right now, is not our home, nor is it our reality. It's a test, an illusion, a veil. That's all reality is. If you want more proof, here's some things to look up. Leonard Susskind's holographic universe theory, Rupert Sheldrake's morphic resonance theory, and looking at fractals and sacred geometry. And all of those are related to one another. All right. All this to say, no one is the sum total of their DNA, because all of this proves is that the meat sack that you are living in is only for you to perceive things around you and to be the main character of whatever it is you're dreaming at any moment in time. The meat sack is not the important part, right? So no one is the sum total of their DNA, and some God who writes his name on your helix of your DNA, which is what her talk is talking about, like Andy writing his name on Woody's boot, does not change that. Are y'all still here? Nobody's making comments. I feel like sometimes I go on a rant and everybody's like, whoa. All right. So I think I went off enough about that. Now, he has in here this whole code thing. If you open up the full reading, that's some of the images. So if you want to screenshot that and have all the images, just open up the full reading and wait till it comes up and you can see it. And then there's this list of amino acids. Nobody says that Hertak isn't smart. I just think he's kind of off on a tangent. All right, so verse 42. In the human membrane, the quote, stop, end quote, represents the impulses known as uracil, adenine, guanine, which is UAG, uracil, adenine, adenine, which is UAA, and uracil, guanine, adenine, UGA, which represent the periods of termination in the chain formation of proteins and are the equivalent of the omega points of divine regenesis. So let's talk DNA caps. Oh, Spain Man's folding laundry. Yes. Look at you multitasking. All right, so let's talk DNA caps. In theories of panspermia, ancient outer space, and esoteric biology and theosophical traditions, there is a claim that our DNA was engineered. So if you look even ancient Mesopotamia, right, the Anunnaki, all of that says that our DNA was engineered and limited to regulate human consciousness, longevity, and or spiritual access. Now in Christianity, they kind of believe that too, right? Like we were in the garden and everything was great. And then Eve, ate an apple and then had Adam eat the apple and then everything changed, right? So in these ancient to modern theories, beings created and or modified humanity through genetic engineering, capping off certain DNA to limit human potential, such as telepathy, immortality, or divine knowledge. Now, it even says in the Bible and on the Sumerian kings list, people lived for like tens of thousands of years, right? So maybe there's something to that. We got messed with a little bit by angels, extraterrestrials, whatever. Angels are extraterrestrials, are they not? They are aliens, are they not? And sometimes they're UFOs, right? Like just in the meaning of the word. Ancient astronaut theorists say, yes, that's right. Did you know 90% of the human genome does not code for proteins? Okay. Mainstream science calls this junk DNA. Let me say it again. 90% of the human genome does not code for proteins. Mainstream science calls this junk DNA. Is there anybody in here who believes that this biological meat suit has junk DNA? Just junk. Like it's the appendix of DNA. I don't believe that in the slightest. 90% of the human genome is junk DNA. Come on now. Many theorists argue that it's actually dormant code. These are dormant things that we don't tap into for whatever reason. Maybe it's capped. Maybe we're capped. Maybe psychologically we're capped. Who knows? In fact, in epigenetics, genes can be turned off or capped by environmental factors, also by chemical signals, or even trauma can all turn off or cap DNA. If they can be turned off, they definitely can get turned on, right? So in Gnosticism, Yahweh deliberately trapped divine souls into matter. So almost like this is a prison planet, okay? Capping their spiritual DNA to keep them enslaved in the matrix. That's in Gnosticism. Spademan says, maybe we're all a race of neutered superheroes. Maybe. And you know what that just made me think about is, think about when you were a child, right? That there was some part of you that thought that you could fly or jump big. And sometimes don't kids do things that are like, whoa, how'd you do that? I think about my little boys, you know, climbing up wall frames, doing flips off of furniture, never being taught. Nobody ever showed him these things. It's just sort of like he just knew he could do these things. And aren't kids like that? So in some way, going through the trauma of living a life, especially in the Western culture and not close to nature, probably does cap some things for us. You know, we start getting very unhealthy. We start having these limiting beliefs. And eventually we think, oh God, if I did a backflip off of the couch, I'd probably break my neck and die. A kid never thinks that. They're like, woohoo, I'm excited, flip. Yeah. Eddie says, let's turn all of them on. Let's see what happens. I'm down. You know, it couldn't get any worse. You know, we're around all this beautiful nature and we just don't have access to it. Isn't that crazy? That's nuts. All right. So the Hopi, the Dogon, and Tibetan traditions speak all of them, by the way. And I use those specifically because that's like hitting some people far away. Okay. The Hopi, more Western continents, right? The Dogon, Africa, and then Tibet, right? All of those traditions speak of star ancestors who gave humans wisdom, but it was hidden for a later awakening. They gave the wisdom, but they said, hold on to it. Hold on to it. It's a secret for now. But at some point, humanity is going to start this awakening and they're going to need this knowledge. The Hopi, the Dogon, and in Tibet speak of these same star ancestors. If this all sounds impossible or like far out or silly woo-woo stuff, let's talk about Henrietta Lacks. Oh, before we do, JB Design says, what do you think of the red sun theory, the theory that human beings, if we left the solar system and found the right environment, would unlock abilities similar to Superman being weak by red suns? The only real thing that I can offer to that is that for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, because we have found hominid skeletons from millions of years ago. Okay. So for tens, hundreds, maybe millions of years, we as humanity have always viewed the sun as the creator, which, I mean, it still makes sense, right? Like with the sun is, plants grow, trees grow, animals need the sun, except for like the cave dwelling thing, salamanders and whatnot. But let's not talk about them. The sun helped create life anyway, whether you believe it's the father or a representation of a father, or however you believe it. Millions, okay, let's just say 100,000 years, okay, 100,000 years, including Kemet and these other places that were far advanced in their science than we are now. And I say that because we can't figure it out. So obviously they're more advanced. It is possible, though, that over time, moving away from us giving energy to the sun and only taking energy from the sun, because we're no longer these deeply spiritual, natural human beings, It could be that the sun is weaker, less strong, much different. I mean, we know that the earth is different, right? Over time, we have lost oxygen. Well, when you're oxygen rich, when you're in an oxygen rich environment, guess what? You can run faster. You can jump higher. You can flip off the back of the couch and it doesn't matter. But the atmosphere has gotten heavier where we have lost oxygen over time. I would assume the atmosphere has changed, right? And so the only thing that I can add to that is that some of the responsibility for our sun changing may be on our shoulders as humans. Maybe we shouldn't take so much from nature and we should actually give back some to see if we don't unlock something. Adrian says, is this associated with the conversations around the indigo children? Do you guys want me to do a show on the indigo children and the crystal children? I think it might be interesting. Associated, yes, kind of, because what's her name? Carol. Oh my gosh, Auntie, help me. She talked about the first wave, the second wave. So what the indigo children is about is that on the other side, okay, on the other side of the veil, right? There are entities who are trying to help humanity get to this awakening, trying to help humanity to wake up from the simulation, to realize that this is all fake, right? Fake. I'll say it that way, right? If you've ever had a nightmare, it doesn't matter if it's fake, it's scary. And so these entities, whether you believe that they're from another planet, they're from the spiritual realm, whatever, are sent in, yes, Dolores Cannon. That's what it is. Thank you so much, Auntie. Yes, Dolores Cannon. I knew you would know. I'm like, Carol somebody, and then you know the name. Anyway, yes, Dolores Cannon. Okay. Lee Carroll also talked, okay? But these waves included indigo children and later crystal children. Now, there are specific waves. Now, one of the first waves that happened is where we ended up with hippies, okay? The hippie movement, right? This awakening, all of this is fake. War is dumb. Like civil rights movements, right? But then normal people are born who are sort of born with their eyes closed. Indigo children, crystal children, those kind of people are sort of born with their eyes open. Now, they can still be indoctrinated. They could still be trying to follow the rules. They could still, because generally these people end up, or that they not end up, but generally these people are very empathetic, sympathetic, empathetic to the point of almost psychically empathetic, if that makes sense. And so it is connected in that way that there are societies and cultures and entities outside of our reality that have some sort of play on what goes on here. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, there was a lot of comments going on. Okay, Spain Man says, Michael Cremo claims that they found the handiwork, small metal orbs, dated 1 billion years. I haven't seen that. That looks interesting. You would also be much larger in an oxygen-rich environment. Would you be a giant? Is this maybe why we had giants? We already know we've lost oxygen over time, right? But the interesting thing is that when you look at when all the hominids came about, right, there were so many different hominids. And some of these hominids, early humans, were like 3 foot tall. And some were giants. But for some reason, mainstream media, academia, education wants to pretend like the giants are fake. Well, it's like, okay, but if we can have 3-foot tall hominids, why wouldn't we have 9-foot tall hominids or even 11-foot tall hominids? That doesn't make sense until you really look at it and they try to make it to where the Neanderthals were always the tallest. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you know why they want to make the Neanderthals the biggest ones, but they weren't. Okay. There are tribes in Africa right now of super duper tall people, right? Super tall people. And you can find internet videos where you have somebody who's like almost 8 foot tall talking to somebody who's like 5 foot tall. Does it not look like they're a giant? I was just watching a video today where Shaq was going around talking to people, and it's almost surreal. Watch, hit the microphone. It's almost surreal to watch those videos because he's so much bigger than everybody he talks to. I don't know. Somebody put in the chat how tall Shaq is, because I want to think about that for a second. I have sons that are over 6 foot tall. Okay. And they were over 6 foot tall starting at like 15 years old. They're very tall. And I am short enough that I come up to their underarms. So I'm just thinking, however tall Shaq is, like, I would look like a child. Shaq would be a giant, right? I would look at Shaq and be like, giant. We see giant humans now, and yet we still want to make it a myth that there were ever giants. That's nuts. And Shaq isn't even the tallest human being, right? He's just very, very tall. Okay. Spain Man says, I have 2 over 3 books in my Audible. That's awesome. I'm still just super proud of Auntie for knowing it off the top of her head. Oh, Auntie says, shout out to First Wave. Yes, because Auntie's part of the First Wave. Yep. Adrian says, clairvoyant people, bah. Because I tell him all the time he's clairvoyant. Spain Man says 7 foot 2 or 3 inches. Okay, so we're looking at 7171 is in Google. Okay, so think about it this way. Let's just, for ease of mathematics, let's say he's 7'2". Okay, I'm 5'2". 2 full feet taller. That is a giant, right? That is a child taller than me. Like that's and would look insane, right? Because Shaq is also not a teeny tiny guy. How much does he weigh? He's not teeny tiny. Because we've all seen super tall people who, their knees are kind of knobby and their elbows are bigger than their forearms, right? Because they're so tall. Their arms and legs are so long. But then you have people like Shaq who he is not skinny. LeBron, not skinny, right? So to say that giants never existed, when we also say the average human was only 5 foot tall, and that was the human male, right? A Homo sapien male was about 5 foot tall. Then let's say you come across some people who are 8 foot tall. Would you not call them a giant? If as a grown man, you come across another man who's 3 foot taller than you would call them a giant. You would. 300 plus, Adrian says, yeah. So he's 2 foot taller than me and more than double my size. He's a giant. He is a giant. God, that would just be so. Just think about that as adults. We're all adults listening. You come across somebody who is 2 foot taller than you and double your weight. Would there not be part of you that feels like they are a giant? Of course you would. All right. I've derailed enough. let's get back on track. All right. So we talked about a lot of woo-woo stuff, but let's talk about Henrietta Lacks. okay, when we're talking about uncapping DNA, okay? As Spain Man says, especially when a time when civilizations were more isolated, right? Or nomadic. You're just traveling as a nomad and you never, ever, 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 ever see any other hominid. And then all of a sudden you see giant man, right? You would say he's a giant. Henrietta Lacks. Okay. Put a 1 in the chat if you know who Henrietta Lacks is. We're going to take a poll. For the replay gang, pause here. Put a 1 in the chat if you know who Henrietta Lacks is. Because everybody should. They should. But stuff gets suppressed. So put a 1 in the chat. Don't look it up on Google. If you are, I knew Adrienne did. If you know who Henrietta Lacks is, put that 1 in. Okay, Henrietta Lacks. Born August 1st, 1920 in Roanoke, Virginia. Okay. She died, and I'm putting that in quotes for a reason, October 4th, 1951, from cervical cancer at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. I put died in quotes because not all of her is dead. And she's not being kept alive either. She was poor, she was Black, and she was a tobacco farmer. She was a mother of 5, and none of them knew what would eventually happen with Mrs. Lax's cells. So when she was being treated for cancer, the doctors took a sample of the tumor without her consent or knowledge, okay? But that was standard procedure for women at the time, okay? It's probably especially Black women, right? But for women, men always gave consent. And if there was no man around to give consent, then the doctor, as a man, gave his own consent. Okay, so no consent whatsoever. They took part of her tumor, okay? Her cells did something never seen before or since, by the way. They didn't die, right? They multiplied endlessly, which is something they'd never seen before. These cells are immortal, and they are still alive to this day, even outside of a human body. No matter what, they just reproduce endlessly and never die. These cells, named HeLa cells, Henrietta Lack HeLa cells, became the foundation of polio vaccine development, cancer research and developments that have happened since that time, AIDS treatment, cloning, gene mapping, in vitro fertilization, and COVID vaccine research. See why you should know about this? HeLa cells have been launched into space, exposed to nuclear bombs, and used in experiments across the globe. They do not die. Nuclear bombs, they do not die. They're launched into space. Guess what? They do not die. Okay. Does this sound a bit unethical, though? It should, because Miss Lax was never asked about this. And it was hidden from her family for decades. Her descendants have never been compensated. Look at all this science and all the ways that her cells have been used. And all of those doctors and researchers and people have made millions of dollars off of it. Okay. Her descendants have never been compensated, ever. Even though pharmaceutical companies, so the pharmaceutical side, have made billions, and this is known knowledge, billions off of HeLa cell research. The only settlement was with Thermo Fisher Scientific in 2023. That's a small company, right? That's the only settlement. Wild, huh? Her story isn't just about medical ethics, though. That's not really what we're talking about. It's also about uncapped or unlocked DNA. How did this happen? How does it happen? Normal human cells have a built-in time limit called the Hayflick limit, and it's about 50 divisions, and then they die. That's just how our cells work. They reproduce, they get 50 divisions, and then they die off. HeLa cells don't die. They have a telomerase reactivation, and it prevents telomere shortening, the aging and dying. There is no aging and dying in the HeLa cells at all. Yeah, Spainman says, makes you hate this physical existence sometimes. Shake my head. Yeah. Yeah. So researchers found non-coding, remember, codes, simulation? Researchers found non-coding regions in HeLa cells were involved in regulation and stress resistance, supporting the theory that, quote, junk DNA is dormant coding, not waste. So let's flip the script again. Psalms 82, 6 through 7. Ye are gods, but ye shall die like men. But HeLa cells did not and do not die like man. She proves that human beings are not broken, but sealed off in some way. Here's my tangent. I figured out why my nose itches. There's a little hair. Okay, let's keep going. My gosh, we haven't almost an hour and we haven't even made it to the second key. Okay, verse 75. Enoch told me even greater experiments can be done with DNA RNA when biophysicists interface two electromagnetic fields so as to create a neutral zone. These experiments will be a significant key to future biophysics in that they will demonstrate how the DNA RNA can be adjusted. Ooh, I need a drink now. Because now he's, this is Yahweh's dude, right? And he's talking about modifying DNA. All right, so when I tell you, I believe the powers that be are following this guideline. Maybe not this specific book, but this is the stuff they're following. Something very similar. Here's another reason why. The DNA stuff, right? Let's talk DNA RNA adjustments by biophysicists, okay? The COVID vaccine and specifically mRNA vaccines by Pfizer and Moderna. You guys didn't know I was going to talk about the COVID vaccine tonight, did you? But I am. So the chemicals in those vaccines use messenger RNA, it's called mRNA, to tell your cells to make a piece of spike protein found on the surface of the COVID-19 virus. Let me repeat that. These chemicals use mRNA to tell your cells to make a piece of spike protein found on the surface of the COVID-19 virus. This is to trigger an immune response, which is okay, I guess, if this was like the chickenpox, right? Because you know how, like, if you've had the chickenpox, you can't get it again until you're super old and you get shingles and it's terrible, and because it's totally different. But because it's all varicella. But that's what I'm talking about, like those kind of illnesses that once you had it, you can't get it again. We all know COVID is not like that. So creating a protein to have an immune response to it when you can still keep getting it just doesn't seem to make logical sense to me, because COVID is not like that. People can get COVID over and over and over again, and then they'll tell you it's just a new strain. You're immune to the other one. Now it's a new strain. Well, why did I get the shot in the first place then? Right? In 2021, MIT and the Swedes did a study showing that the Pfizer vaccine caused reverse transcription, meaning that the mRNA became DNA and entered the genome itself. So supposedly they have the messenger RNA And it's just to tell, it's a messenger, right? It's to tell your DNA to create the spike protein so you have an immune response and you become more immune to COVID, right? But then when they did the study, the Pfizer vaccine caused reverse transcription. The mRNA became DNA and entered the genome of the person. Now, do you guys remember when it came out that they were using RNA or different gene things with these? Like, no, I don't want you to affect my DNA. And they're like, that's impossible. 2021 study says it happens. Okay. Humans have line 1 reverse transcriptase. Okay, so I'm going to explain how this works. Naturally, we have this reverse transcriptase, right? That converts RNA to DNA. It happens in embryos, cancer, some immune responses, and in stress response, right? So just remember this anytime that somebody tells you it's impossible for the vaccines to alter your DNA, because studies showed that it did. That messenger that Pfizer created turned into DNA and entered people's genomes. It's a part of your DNA now. It's with you forever and ever. And what is it affecting? We don't know, because they won't even admit that it did it. Uh-oh, Spain man got the Pfizer germ. Uh-oh. All right, so now the Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca vaccines are adenovirus vector vaccines, which involved DNA, not mRNA, DNA delivered by a modified virus. Scientists say that it shouldn't integrate into your genome. They use that word. Well, it shouldn't. We think. I mean, it might not, probably won't. They literally use the word shouldn't. You're injecting DNA into people and they're like, well, it shouldn't affect your DNA. And here we are talking about genomes. All right, let's keep going. Therefore, the new gel capacity will demonstrate the ability to live in high-frequency light radiations and will exemplify the mutation of the physical form that is necessary for those beings who plan to survive the great changes in light radiation when our sun goes into an electromagnetic null zone. This null zone is necessary for the reprogramming of our genetic structure. Do you guys know that some experimental biotech platforms use an enzyme called luciferase? Lucifer. And it's called luciferase because it is light emitting. Why do these things have spiritual names if none of this is spiritually based? This is why I tell you, I think they're utilizing this book, that science and spirituality and even capitalism and government and all of that is spiritually based. They're going to, transhumanism. They're going to flip a switch and be a real winter soldier. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So the other key, that's all 2-0-2. And 2-0-3, let's look at how he explains it. Enoch explained that there would be found many double helixes, which is how our DNA, what it looks like. It's two strands of the double helix. Enoch explained that there would be found many double helixes in a given chromosome, allowing for many faces of Adamic creation to be evolved from the central code, all having the image and similitude of the eternal present. So everybody's going to look like God. Okay, got it. All right. Through this great biological change of our threshold, the bioengineers will recognize the words of the Father when he says, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. Sorry, I had to say it like that, but it sounds a little narcissistic. I am everything and everyone and all the stuff. And I want everybody to look like me and act like me and talk like me. Wait, there's a rap song. Eminem, the real Slim Shady. Sorry. Squirrel moments are bad tonight. Aren't you glad I have notes? All right. So, did you know in the Bible that logos was translated to the word me? Do you guys know what logos means? Logos means word, reason, divine order, discourse, and logic. And logos was translated to me. So when it says all things come through me, it literally could be saying all things come through words, reason, divine order, discourse, and logic, right? It's all those things together. So I am is logos, right? Me, logos, divine order, logos. It's all the logos. But it is stealing logos because your inner self is logos, not some other entity playing Jiminy Cricket for you and sitting on your shoulder and telling you what's right, wrong, or otherwise about you and about your life and how you should behave and all those kind of things. When somebody says, I think, therefore I am the great I am, I'm speaking to my inner logos, and everybody has logos. Adrian says, studied by MIT right before COVID-19 started. Adrian says, luciferase was bioluminescence to be used as a marker for those that took a vaccine. And they call it Lucifer. Wild. Right, listen. Okay. What if ascending in Hertock's divine hierarchy is just getting promoted to cosmic middle management? Because that's kind of what it's sounding like, okay? All these religious figures he talks about just sound like TVA clerks. When he talks about these different entities, right? This hierarchy, like the TVA, replaces karma with case files and replaces spiritual lessons with these trials. Like you're being judged for all these things. And remember, at the end of the day, it's, well, you have a choice and you can make a choice. And your choices choose Yahweh and what the brotherhoods of light are doing or die. Does that sound like a choice? That doesn't sound like a choice. Foucault taught long ago that the best control is internalized regulation. Boy, doesn't that sound like the education system and religion. So Loki, being made to hunt variants himself, mirrors how this council, in Hertock's book, makes souls enforce its own prison rules. And that salvation is just a promotion to being a prison guard. Don't we have all those in our lives, right? People pocket watching you and spewing moral superiority on you and everybody judging everybody else and nobody wants to mind their own damn business. So hear me when I say every system of supremacy works on this hierarchical structure. Every system of supremacy works on this hierarchical structure. Admission, submission, disappointment. Over and over again. Thank you guys for sticking in with me tonight. It was kind of long because there was two of them, but I had a lot to say about the genome stuff and it kind of played into some other things that I wanted to talk about. So I appreciate you hanging with me tonight. I hope you have a good rest of your Wednesday. On the 10th, so this coming Tuesday is going to be part 2 of the Bloodline series. I'm going to finish presenting that. And if you're interested in figuring out your ancient bloodline, there are ways to do that, regardless of if you have your family tree or you've had those goofy DNA tests, which are false, by the way. I can even tell you how they work and why they're false. Stick with me in these bloodlines because I'm going to start going through those bloodlines and how they connect to one another, where they came from, those kind of things. It should be interesting. However, On the 15th, Father's Day, I'm going to do a special. I'm going to be responding to a creator named Lucius Aurelian. But this show is going to be on old world wizards, and that will be on Father's Day. So I hope you guys can be here. I hope you enjoy that for Father's Day. Hopefully it's a little gift to you. It's a little interesting. So hopefully you can be there for those. And of course, next Wednesday will be another installment of the Keys of Enoch. So I appreciate everybody being here. One last check of the comment section. Armando says, this feels like old school pivot point Wednesday. Yeah, it kind of does, right? Weirdness, tinfoil hats, and squirrel moments. Hashtag satisfied. It did. And I think the further and further and further we get into those keys, it's going to be a lot more like this, because it's going to start bringing about a lot of these conspiracies and these different things that have happened. You know, I saw a meme today that said, at this point, you should probably tell your conspiracy theorist friend, I'm sorry, because so much is coming out, right? So it makes me think of. Peace to you as well, Eddie. All right, everybody have a good night. I'm going to show you a picture of my dog. Please like the video if you haven't already. It really helps the algorithm to know what kind of things you like. Share where you think it's appropriate, especially to someone who you think needs to hear it. And don't forget to check out some of the wilder Pivot Point Wednesday shows. And last, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, especially if you want to break down complex concepts that make the esoteric not so teric, helping you on your journey to become your most authentic self. By subscribing, you'll join a community that thrives on curiosity and growth, and you'll never miss out on insights and some wild discussions. Let's uncover the universe together. Bye.